Good. I'm nearly home and I'll jump on my laptop.
Yeah, you're right. No worries. Cool. Yeah, what we're going to do today, guys, is we're talking about secrets of the subconscious mind. So, as I just mentioned, I do have a pretty intense session. Not intense. That's the wrong word. In depth. Actually, to be honest, there are going to be parts of it which are a little bit intense. Because I'm going to essentially help you to understand your subconscious mind and help you to understand your unconscious mind. Now, this is really, there's a quote, and I'll get to this quote as we get into the presentation today, but there's a quote from a famous psychologist called Carl Jung, and it says that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. So our subconscious and our unconscious mind really directs a lot of our experience and our perspective of life. And like I said, I'm going to explain all of this, but this is really the key to breaking free from limiting beliefs. It's the key to overcoming recurring life patterns. It's really the key to up-leveling yourself and your relationships, even your career. I honestly believe you will achieve in life whatever you expect yourself to achieve. And your expectations are coming from the subconscious mind. It's coming from memories of things that you've experienced in the past, which have created beliefs about what you're capable of experiencing. And it's creating probabilities of what you think you're going to experience next. So I'd love to know, before we get stuck into this presentation, did anyone read the blog post about secrets of the subconscious mind? I think Kylie did. But did anyone else? Yeah. If you didn't, Larry, you read it as well? Cool. I'd love to know some key takeaways. Like, just drop it in the chat box. What kind of takeaways did you guys have from that? Anything standing out for you? Just share it with me in the chat box. I've got a little checklist here as well. So we're going to kind of hit this checklist before we dive into everything today, because there's a few prerequisites that I would encourage you to explore whilst we are kind of covering this topic of the subconscious mind. So there's a checklist for conscious creation, which I've mapped out here, and it's really simple, right? It is essentially completing the Alchemy of Self document from the end of 2024. If you've been in this community since the end of 2024, you will have seen me talking about the Alchemy of Self document. So this is linked here. And after this video, after this session today, I will put these slides up with the replay, so you can just go and link it, or you could just type in Alchemy of Self in the search bar in the community and you'll find it. But that Alchemy of Self document is a very thorough and detailed way to create a manifesto for yourself and for the identity that's going to help you achieve the things that you want to achieve. Let's say you want to, maybe you want to just become more confident in your relationships or social life. That's going to help you build that identity. Let's say you want to heal and you want to get into a healthy state of being. That's going to help you with that. Even if you wanted to, take your career or your professional life to the next level, I really believe this identity work can help you to do that, helps you to shift into a new identity. And there's a common misconception with this idea of shifting into a new identity, which I want to address right now. I've got it later in the slide, but this is what I do. I've got like so much prepared for you guys, and I've got so many things in my head that we're going to go through today, but I'm a bit impatient. So I want to just kind of address some of these things to start with as they're coming up into my consciousness. People think that shifting your identity means becoming someone else, but that's not what it means. Really, when you're shifting your identity, the idea is that you shift into a version of yourself that is more you, right? And so when you're going through the Alchemy of Self document, it shouldn't necessarily feel like something that is a far away from who you actually are. If you do the document successfully, it should actually feel like the best version of yourself that you're capable of being. So we're not trying to shift into some other identity that's not congruent with ourself. We are trying to shift into an identity that is the most congruent with ourself. Does that make sense? Just type a 111 in the chat box. We're not trying to become someone different. We're trying to become who we really are at the highest level, at the highest potential. And that's the key. Kylie, making me more aware of my thoughts and how they direct your life. Yeah, cool. We'll dive into that stuff today. But yeah, like I said, a couple of things. Just type a 1-1 or a yes into the chat box if you've already done your Alchemy of Self document. If you've already done it, let me know. Yep, cool. Good job, Larry. Yep, Kylie. Yep, Polly. Awesome, awesome, awesome. I think Loz has just ducked out to jump onto her laptop, but I'm sure she's going to be back in a second. So yeah, this checklist here, you can go and watch those and do those. If you've already done them, great. And then there's a blog post that I wrote the other day, which we're going to cover here, but that's also worth reading because it'll help you understand everything in more depth. Obviously, I'm going to teach on this now, and we're going to, explore some of this terrain, but it's always helpful for you to do your own study. As you guys know, I'm really big on encouraging you guys to do your own study. So it can be good to go and read it over and over again and take this information in different ways. A couple of things I want to start with is just some definitions, right, of what we're talking about, because we're going to talk about the conscious mind, we're going to talk about the subconscious mind, and we're going to talk about the unconscious mind as well, right? And there's a slight difference between the subconscious and the unconscious, right? So let's just define these different aspects of the mind now. The conscious aspect of the mind is really the direct experience that you're having in the present moment. So if you imagine like an old videotape, I'm sure everyone is old enough to remember them. Maybe not Larry. I think Larry's a bit like younger. Maybe not too much younger. But you guys remember videotapes, and they have or even a camera roll, right? Like a film camera with the tape, right? And there's each different bit of the tape has a different scene on it, or a different, slice of the movie, right? Your conscious mind is essentially the aspect of your mind that is looking directly at the one scene that is present. So right now, as you guys are here with me on this laptop, listening, like looking at your screen or your computer, you're having an experience of a kind of cutout of reality in this present moment. And your conscious mind is experiencing that. It's the direct experience you have in the present moment. That's the conscious mind, right? The subconscious mind is essentially like the rest of the tape, right? So it's all of the underlying thoughts, beliefs, stories, memories, habits, and identity that shape your perception of what you experience in the present moment. So each one of us has a different, unique perspective, right? So we all experience the present moment. We are all here experiencing the present moment together. And in some way, we're experiencing a similar thing. But in another way, we have a completely different perspective. All of us have a unique perspective, right? A unique lens through which we are kind of filtering this moment in time. And that filter or that perspective is essentially the subconscious mind, right? All of the underlying thoughts, beliefs, stories, memories, habits, identities that shape our perception of what we experience in the moment, right? So, we're all here, but we're all could be having completely different experiences, right? Or as we go out into the world and experiences happen to us or happen, we experience things, right? Not that they're happening to us, but we experience them. Different people have different experiences, even when they're having the same experience. For example, I'll just give you an example this morning. My daughter was up at 2 a.m. this morning, crazy. I got up out of bed at 2 a.m. and took her for a drive to try and get her to sleep. Didn't get her to sleep. Ended up just sitting on the couch watching movies with her all morning because she just wouldn't go back to sleep. And it was like 3-4 o'clock in the morning, which was crazy, right? And so I let Missy sleep, right? Because we kind of swap every now and then. But this morning, Missy slept. And this Missy got up and she was extremely frustrated and erratic and impatient with Coco And so where I was a lot more calm and patient with her. Now we're both having a similar experience in that Coco was just a bit wired this morning. I don't know why. And, you know, we both didn't have a great night's sleep. However, I'm not trying to toot my own horn here. I'm just sharing an example, but I was a lot more calm this morning. Sometimes I'm not, but this morning I was, and she was a lot more erratic and angry. So we're having the similar experience, but two completely different perspectives, right? And I'm sure that you can imagine in your life times when you've had experiences where you had an experience and maybe you were calm or you were erratic, and there was someone else having the exact same experience and they were totally calm or they were totally erratic, right? Just an example, right, of how our perception of things changes the experience. And our perception is really shaped off our subconscious, right? Which is all the underlying stuff, like the hard drive. And then the unconscious is I've just put, you don't know what you don't know. So sometimes you are actually aware of your subconscious. So if you guys are here, you know that you've got negative beliefs, you know that you've got negative thoughts, you know that you've got, you know, stuff in your mind that's not supportive of you going where you want to go. So you know it. And that's to say that you're kind of a little bit aware of the problem, right? You can be aware of your subconscious, right? You can be conscious of your subconscious. A lot of that is what we're doing in here. We're kind of going, hey, cool. What are these limiting thoughts? What are these limiting stories that we're having? So you're conscious of the subconscious. Now, the unconscious is a little bit different because the unconscious is the you don't know what you don't know, right? So it's like you don't even know what you're missing, you know, what you're not seeing. There seems to be a block, but what is it? I don't even know what it is. Right? Maybe you get some underlying understanding of the subconscious thoughts and beliefs and stories that you've got, and even the memories and the habits, you know, that's probably, I shouldn't be doing that, right? But then there's another level of unconsciousness, which is like, it's in the dark, right? This is like the shadow or the darkness, the lack of light. You can't even see it. So you got the conscious, that's the light. You can see it. It's present. It's here. Subconscious, just below, right? Which is essentially our underlying thoughts, beliefs, stories, memories, all this kind of stuff. And the unconscious is even deeper. Still underlying thoughts, beliefs, stories, memories, all that kind of stuff. But it's the stuff that you don't know that you don't know. Right? So it's kind of unconscious, totally in the dark. Right? So that's just helping us to have some definitions. And we're going to talk through this more as we go. But again, this is the quote from the psychologist Carl Jung. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. So at the end of this video today, I'm going to walk you guys through an awesome exercise that I actually have been doing on myself recently, which is a shadow work exercise. So we're going to be doing, I never really have taught much shadow work because I've never really resonated with it myself. And I don't know why, I just haven't. It hasn't come into my awareness. It hasn't been something that I've done until recently. I've been doing a little bit of this shadow work and I finding it very interesting. And so today I'm going to share with you the process that I've been using on myself, and we'll do that towards the end. And this process helps us to make the unconscious conscious. So it helps us to see the things that we maybe either don't want to see or have suppressed or pushed down. And it's really fascinating. And so until you make the unconscious conscious, it directs your life and you call it fate. So the idea is here, we have to make the unconscious conscious. We have to make the stuff that we don't know conscious. We have to become aware of it. We have to bring it to the light, right? Stuff that you shove down and, you know, put it in the dark, that actually has power over you, because if you're shoving it down and you don't want to look at it and it's in the dark, you have essentially got shame around that thing. You don't want it to be seen because you don't want to be humiliated or you don't want to be ashamed of yourself. And so you kind of push it down into the corner there. But when you push it down into the corner, you're suppressing it. And so it stays there. And so we're going to actually open it up a little bit today, and have a look at it. And don't worry, it's a great process to do. So the goal of, you know, this exercise, or essentially the goal of, you know, one of Carl Jung's philosophies, he said, we've got this goal, right? What's the goal of doing all of this work into the subconscious and everything like that? And he says the goal is individuation. And individuation is essentially the coming together of your individual self, right? Total harmony within all aspects of the self. That's what we're aiming towards here, which is totally peaceful, total harmony, total peace, total coherence, total congruence, with my language, total alignment with all aspects of the self, right? That's a beautiful thing to have, because then you're not hiding things, you're not ashamed of things, you're not, talking negatively to yourself about things. You're not resisting certain aspects of yourself, but instead you're coming into congruence, alignment, and harmony with the self. And that's what the goal of this session today is. If you have any questions at all throughout this session, guys, as well, just throw them into the chat box and we'll get to them whenever I can. I haven't seen anything come through yet, so I'm sure you guys are just listening. Cool. All right, let's go. Subconscious secrets. Oh, where are we? Busting the myth. Now, I mentioned this briefly before at the start of the call. There's a common misconception with reprogramming the mind or shifting our identity. It's that we're trying to become someone else. It's like, I need to reprogram my mind to become someone else, to become a better version of myself, a new version of myself. I need to totally transform myself, right? And it's almost as if we're trying to become someone that we're not, right? And that's a myth. That's not true. You don't want to do that. That will make you miserable. You do not want to be someone that you're not. Instead, you want to be exactly who you are at the highest level. You want to be your true self. You want to shift into an identity where you're embodying your true self, right? You're taking full ownership for yourself and who you are as a person. And that is power, because you are unique, right? You are unique. There's no one else like you. And I really believe that you're in your power when you're able to show up confidently as yourself, right? You're not trying to be anyone else. You're just being authentically you. So that's what we're doing when we're reprogramming our subconscious mind. We're taking out all of the beliefs that keep us playing small or keep us in an identity or a belief system that's limited. And instead, we're trying to move closer towards a version of ourselves that is limitless. We don't have limits, right? We're like, here I am in all of my wonder, right? And that might be uncomfortable for you to even think about right now. And if so, good, because it should be uncomfortable, right? It should be a little bit uncomfortable. That's when you know that you're moving in the right direction, where you're actually a little bit uncomfortable, right? Because probably you've spent your whole life putting yourself into a cage or a box trying to keep everyone else happy. And so you've had to hide certain aspects of yourself, or, society has taught you can't be like this, can't be like that. And so you've learned to hide these certain aspects of yourself, and you're putting on a mask, not being who you really are, which is tiring, which makes you anxious, which makes you depressed, because you're depressing yourself. You're essentially depressing yourself, like you are pushing yourself down, where we don't want to do that. We want to become who we really are. And that's a beautiful thing, right? If you're feeling very anxious or very depressed, it's like a defense mechanism, right? Where it's really just you trying to keep yourself safe. But that sense of safety is flawed, right? It's kind of wrong. Maybe what you learned, but it's not really helping you, right? And the obvious sign of that is that you are experiencing anxiety or depression, right? It's like, ding, 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 this is not right. Like, you shouldn't be experiencing this if you're being your true, authentic self. And I really believe that, right? So that's the myth that I wanted to bust. We're not trying to become a different, like another person, another version of ourselves, someone who we may have seen in the media as like, oh my God, you need to be like that. No, we're not trying to do that. We're just trying to become who we really are, our true self, right? Is this making sense so far, guys? Drop a 222 in the chat box if you're with me so far. Just a 222. Awesome. Epic, epic, epic. Cool. All right. So in order to have what you really want to have, you need to be who you really are. So you've probably got ideas of what you want to have in your life, but we don't want to focus on the having. We want to focus on the being, right? So we don't want to, because this leads to suffering, right? When we are constantly just attached to having something that we don't have right now, that leads, it's externally based, right? You need the external validation to feel good within, right? And it really just leads to struggling, right? Because you're trying so desperately to get this thing that you think that you need to feel happy, instead of just being who you really are, right? If you don't have what you want yet, you're not being who you're supposed to be being. You're not being your true self. right? In whatever capacity that is. Maybe you're people pleasing, you're trying to keep everyone else happy. You haven't met yourself deeply yet. I believe this is the key. You need to really meet yourself deeply and take ownership of who you are, right? You need to be who you really are. And I know I'm repeating myself here, but I think this is extremely important. It should be like this, right? Be, do, have, right? So people often have this flipped the wrong way around. They want to have everything and they think, okay, well, I want to have that, then what do I need to do? And they don't think about who they need to be. They just think of having the thing. I need to have this relationship. I need to have this much money. I need to have this job. I need to have this car. I need to have this holiday. I need to have all of these things. I need to have the kids. I need to, whatever it is. You think you want to have all of these things, but that really just leads to suffering, because if you don't have it right now, you're just suffering, right? And then you think, okay, what do I need to do? And you're scrambling and you're pushing and you're forcing and you're trying to do all the things that you think you need to do to have the thing. And it ends up just being this kind of like hustle culture. This, it's really an unconscious collective expectation of what you think you should do. I should just work and do this and do this and do this and this, and then I'll have this. No one ever talks about the being. Who do you need to be? Right? And this is really what we want to focus on. We want to focus on being the person we need to be. Because when we are being the person we need to be, and I'll explain this in a second, but essentially that means when you've got the beliefs, the identity, the habits are starting to go into the doing. But when you got the beliefs, the identity, right? The mindset, the energy, the emotional state, when you're being in that desired emotional state, when you're being with those beliefs, when you're being in that energy of, I already have everything that I need, everything that you think you want or that you want to have will come to you, right? And you'll start, if you're being that person, you will start doing the things that you need to do. Right now, if you're too focused on just the doing and the having, you might not even be clear of what you need to do, right? The other day, I'll share a story with you guys. The other day, I think it was yesterday. I was going through a moment in time, and I was thinking to myself, what do I need to do, right? And I was just really like, what do I need to do? And I started to get like a little bit frustrated, and like I feel like I need to do something, but I don't know what to do. I felt unclear. Right? I'm sure you guys resonate with that, right? Sometimes you feel a little bit unclear. What do I need to do? And I was kind of getting myself into this loop. What do I need to do? I don't know what to do. I'm a bit confused. I'm a bit unclear. And I said, you know what I need to do? I need to stop trying to figure out what I need to do. And I need to just allow myself to be and trust that the answers will come, right? Or I just, this is why it's so beneficial to know how to meditate, right? What I did was I just stopped trying to do anything, and I just put my phone down, I put my journal down, and I just sat in meditation for 10 minutes. Actually, I think it ended up being nearly 20 minutes or something like that. And because I was like, I'm frustrated, I'm confused, I'm unclear, I don't know what to do. What do I do? Okay, cool. I'm just going to sit down and meditate. And I just sat down and meditate and cleared my mind. I just want to let you guys know, I'm not just magically clearing my mind. Like it's not some, awesome skill that I've just developed where I just magically clear my mind. I sat there for like 15 minutes and I waited for my mind to settle itself, right? Like I tell you guys all the time, try to meditate for 10, 15, 20 minutes until you feel satisfied. It took me 10 or 15 minutes and my mind started to settle. But pretty quickly, I started to come to this understanding of I just need to trust, like be in an energy of trust, right? And then there was a few other things that I wrote down as well. But that one word just kept coming to my head, just trust, just trust. I wasn't trusting. I was trying to force. I was trying to do. And because of that, things weren't happening easily. It felt I felt quite frustrated and a bit annoyed, right? And so I sat down, meditated for 15, 20 minutes. And, oh yeah, here we go. Trust. Be a conscious creator. Do things intentionally. Right. And so it's hard to explain to you guys, but the shift came in my energy, right? After that, I felt so much clearer, and I hadn't even done anything. Actually, I had done nothing. I had sat in meditation and did nothing, right? So I changed my state of being, right? before the meditation, I was trying to figure out what I need to do, and I was getting all frustrated and confused because I felt unclear. And then I just stopped doing anything and I focused on being. I became conscious and I became aware, and I came into the present moment, right? I became conscious of being, and I moved my state of being into a much calmer energy, right? Or emotional state of neutrality and trust. And after the meditation, I felt lighter, I felt clearer. Like I didn't, the need to do something just went away. I don't think I even really did that much. I spent most of the afternoon yesterday then just journaling, and I watched a couple of like videos that I'm studying right now, the shadow work stuff. And to be honest, that stuff just started to show up for me. The rest of the afternoon, I didn't need to force anything. Things just started to happen. Like I hadn't planned to watch any shadow work stuff, but I just found myself watching a video, right, about that. And then that led to the next thing, to the next thing, to the next thing, which is informing what I'm teaching you guys now. And so the lesson here is like, it's not always about the doing, and it's definitely not always about the having. The key is about the being, right? You have to be in that energy, and you have to teach yourself the tools, right? So this is why, again, I'm so big with meditation. That is a powerful, powerful tool to instantly connect you with the state of being. And from that place, you get a lot more ease and effortlessness, right? A lot more flow comes from being, from being, right? Cool. So try not to focus too much on the having of whatever you want to have, or the doing of whatever you think you need to do, but focus on being the person you need to be who you really are, right? Cool. Does that make sense for you guys? I know that's, yeah, drop a 333 if that's kind of giving you some insight, or if you have any questions. Awesome. Looks like you guys are getting some insight from that. Great. Cool. All right. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to read you guys some parts of this blog post that I wrote, because I think it's very good for helping you to understand yourself and your mind. And then after this, it's going to lead into some activities that we're going to do. And you're going to leave this session today with some action points and some stuff to work on. But I'm just going to read through this again, just so we can get that understanding of what's going on, right? You can think of your conscious mind as your creative and active mind, right? It's also your state of being in the moment. Like I said, if you imagine that there's a film roll, which has all of the moments in the past and all of the moments in the future, your conscious mind is accessing the direct present moment. It is being, it is the one that is being in the moment, the conscious mind. It's creative, it's active, and it's right here, it's right now. That's the conscious mind, right? And now they say that we only use this conscious mind like 5% of the time, right? So if you're meditating a lot, the idea is really that you're being conscious more. You're being more conscious, right? As opposed to living in the subconscious, which is essentially like the autopilot, right? You can think of your subconscious mind as that habitual, passive mind. Like you just go about your day doing everything that you need to do, and you kind of just wonder how the time passes so quickly, right? It's because you're not really conscious. You're just kind of acting out of habit and autopilot and passivity. But when you're conscious, you're here and you're now, right? So another way of looking at it is by imagining that our subconscious mind is like a storehouse of information, kind of like a computer or a hard drive, whereas the conscious mind is the user who is actively accessing the information. So your subconscious mind is like a hard drive or a computer that stores this vast amount of information, and the conscious mind is the active user. Or another analogy is like the book and a reader. You can see here this book, right, has lots of pages, but I can't read all of these pages at once. I can only open it up and read one page at a time, right? So the subconscious mind is the book that's full of the information, and the conscious mind is the reader who takes in that information page by page. And regardless of what the conscious mind is reading in any specific moment, the subconscious mind will still store the rest of the information in the rest of the book, right? Waiting to be read or called upon when necessary. Or essentially, it'll be there when you're not conscious. You'll be acting out of that subconscious story, right? So this is why we have to be careful of what's in the subconscious mind, because when we're not conscious, we're just acting it out, right? And if we don't have good stuff in there, then 95% of our life we don't want to be operating from an unhelpful story, right? From an unhelpful set of habits and beliefs and memories and stuff, because it will lead to unhelpful outcomes. So the conscious mind is like the tip of the iceberg of your experience, whereas the subconscious mind is the deep body of the iceberg submerged under the water, right? And the subconscious holds all the memories, all the habits, all the learned behaviors, all the life conditioning, and it really directs your life based on those, whereas the conscious mind is the active and present experience of being in the moment, right? I know I've said that a few times now, but just drilling it in there, understanding. So it's kind of like this, right? They use the iceberg analogy a lot. This gets thrown around. You've got this conscious mind here, which is the tip of the iceberg of experience. And then below that, you've got the subconscious, right? So you can kind of see, if you're looking at an iceberg, you got the iceberg on top, right? You can see it, it's pretty clear, right? You're conscious of it. You can actually kind of start to see the underneath as well, right? Which is the subconscious. So you can kind of see the subconscious a little bit, right? But then it goes deeper and it gets darker and you can't see it as much. It becomes unconscious. And then there's actually what's called the collective unconscious, which is really not looked at a lot, right? So we are all part of a bigger system or a bigger mind that we often don't even take into account, right? That how we are influenced by our environment, our society, our culture. But if you are a well-traveled person, it's easy to understand that the environment or the collective definitely makes an impact on the individual. You just need to go to look at different parts of the world and see how people are different to understand that, right? Cool. That makes sense? Yeah. Sweet. So most of our thoughts and feelings in the present come from our experiences and memories in the past. Actually, I would say that all of our thoughts and feelings in the present moment come from experiences or memories in the past, because we learn to think and feel based off memories from the past. Like a child doesn't know how to think, and like a new baby, right? Like a baby doesn't know how to think. They have to learn how to think, right? And they learn how to think based off language in their environment and experiences that they have. And so that's the kind of collective unconscious, right? Family, school, teachers, society, different kids in different parts of the world that learn different languages and learn different ways of communicating and stuff like that, which develop different ways of thinking and feeling and so on, right? So it's all really based off what happened in the past, right? Our current experience of reality is just a kind of cookie cutter of like what we've experienced in the past, right? And the subconscious mind is essentially the hard drive and record of all of those things that you've experienced to date, right? And when you have experiences, you are conscious and all of your senses are there in the external environment with the experience that you're having, right? And then your brain processes those experiences and it creates new neural pathways in the brain, which then create a release of chemicals and hormones in the body, which lead to the emotions or the feelings, right? And then that's what happens next, is that the experience that we have creates a mental and emotional imprint, which is called a memory, and again, stored away in the subconscious mind, but also kind of like in our nervous system and in our brain, right? Through neural pathways, and we start to adapt to certain hormones and chemicals in the body. So all of our experiences in the present really based off these memories in the past. This is why you get triggered by something in the present. I wrote another blog about this, how to control your emotions so you don't end up being a shit person. And I talked about sometimes you get triggered in the present moment by something that seems insignificant, like a stimulus which just doesn't seem significant, but you still find yourself feeling extremely triggered. It's because what's being triggered is a deeper suppressed emotion, right? Now, before I go any further, I'm just going to take a little break for a second because I want you to understand that the secret to kind of, like, I know I'm talking about this and it might be like, oh my God, I'm so programmed. There's so much going on. When you become conscious, really, truly conscious, you can easily just rewrite the stories, right? So even if you become triggered, you can rewrite the story, right? And you can do that through the conscious. When you are conscious, when you're in the experience, when you're in awareness, awareness essentially gives you a blank slate. Consciousness gives you a blank slate. So despite all of the shit that's happened in your life, if you can train yourself to become conscious and aware, you get a clean windscreen. This is why I'm so big on the meditation. Because if you can just train yourself to be consciously aware without judging yourself, without attaching to the story or the thought or the experience, and without expecting it to be any other way than it is, you've got freedom instantly. Like, that's the mic drop moment, right? That is the epitome, right? And we're going to talk about some other stuff here, but from my background in meditation and my personal experiences, that's the mic drop. If you can just train yourself to be conscious, you can have experiences and you can be like aware of the experience without being taken over by the experience. And you can start to rewrite whatever story that you want. You get a blank canvas, you get freedom, you get peace, and you get harmony. Now, we're going to go into some exercises to help you understand yourself more deeply. But I'm just going to tell you, even from my experience on doing some of these exercises in the last 24 to 48 hours, the end goal is the same, right? So it's good to be more aware of myself and my unconscious patterns and stuff like that. But the end goal is always be aware of the thing and accept the thing. Accept yourself, right? Accept the moment. Don't resist it. Accept the experience. Don't resist it. Accept that part of yourself. Don't resist it. Be aware of it, be conscious of it, and then accept it and love it. Most people have these experiences, well, I'm sure you guys would have had these, where something happens and then you start to create a negative story about it, or you start to be in resistance to it. You start to say, oh, this is not good, or I shouldn't feel this way, or I shouldn't think that, or I shouldn't have done that, or that shouldn't have happened. And so you're in resistance to what you're experiencing. And I'm telling you now, the pinnacle, the epitome of success with this work is just allowing things to be as they are and accepting it. And even if you can, loving it as it is. That includes your negative thoughts. It includes your negative traits. It includes your negative behaviors. It includes your negative experiences. So you've got to get past the ego and you've got to allow yourself to just be like, okay, look at me. I'm not perfect, but that's okay. My life isn't perfect, but that's okay. And you can do that through consciousness, right? Through a pure state of peaceful awareness, right? And that's the key. That's the key, right? Like I said, we're going to go into other stuff, but that is the key. I'm telling you guys, that's the secret. Like, people always talk about like, oh, what's the secret, right? I'm telling you, like, I'm yelling it to you. Like, that's the secret. That's it. Like, that is the secret. That's the ultimate, right? It's so funny because it like eludes people. It's like, oh man, I still just don't get it or something. It's like, it's so painfully simple, right? And I'm not saying that as like in a degrading way, because I do it myself. Like, I forget that sometimes. But I'm constantly reminded of that. And like I said, I'm doing this process myself right now, and I'm going to walk you through the process shortly, but I'm reminded myself, dude, come back to the basics. It's so basic, right? Be conscious, be aware without judgment. Love the experiences that you're having. Don't judge the experiences that you're having. You just accept it as it is, right? Don't try to fight it. Don't try to resist it. Don't try to change it, right? Be conscious and allow it to be as it is, right? So yeah, anyway, let's go. Next slide. So as we continue to move through our life, most of our thoughts and feelings in the present will continue to be based on these memories from the past, right? That's why, even I just said, I keep coming back to it over and over again. I need to continually remind myself. But it starts to create biases and it starts to form your attitude towards the things you experience, right? So you have these memories, like lots and lots of memories, lots and lots of thoughts, lots and lots of feelings, starts to create biases, right? So you start to get biased. This will never work out for me. Look at all these experiences I've had where it didn't happen this way for me. Therefore, it's not going to happen again like this way, right? It hasn't worked out for me in the past. How is it going to work out for me in the future? You develop a bias, right? An unhealthy bias. And you start telling yourself, look at all this proof I have that it doesn't work, that I can't be healthy, that I can't be happy, that I can't find a relationship, that I can't earn that money, right? Or whatever it is. You start to develop this bias and it forms an attitude. You start to have this negative attitude where you go, look, it's just never going to work. I don't even know why I try anymore, right? Which then creates belief. I'm not good enough. I'm a loser. This sucks. Right? I'm nervous. I'm awkward. I'm anxious, and things just don't work out for me, right? So you see how it's all created, and then there's a feedback loop, which your beliefs start to create your attitude towards the things you experience, ends up creating more bias. From there, you get stuck in this feedback loop, reliving the past over and over again, unless you hijack the process or the feedback loop with your consciousness, right? Yeah, like I said, once these beliefs become solidified over time, you start to develop a perspective, which is like a lens through which you see the world. And this makes you see reality based off past experiences, which is essentially to say that you develop a specific worldview. And, this gets even more tricky because we start to become these individuals who are attached, right? So we're all individuals. That's great. Not necessarily a bad thing. But we don't want to be individuals who are attached to a certain way of being, to a certain set of belief systems, right? To a certain identity. You don't want to start to become attached to who you think you should be, right? Which is this ego, right? Like I said, the ego is not a bad thing. Everyone has one, and it's just a personal identity, but you do not want to attach yourself to it because that creates a limit on who you can be. But the tricky thing here is that when you become attached to your identity, which most people do, right? Unless you're like a, highly disciplined spiritual person. And even then, you can still get attached to that identity, right? We get attached to these identities and they start to like become like hardened. And then it actually can feel unsafe to have our ego or our identity challenged, right? So you might have imagined yourself, like people often say, oh, I don't have an ego, right? Not true. Everyone has an ego. Everyone has an identity. Everyone has a sense of self, right? And if you say that you don't have an ego, that's your ego. I don't have an ego. I'm not someone who has an ego. Oh, okay. Really? It's funny. And so that's where people will often have resistance, right? And you don't want to argue with people like that because it's a waste of time. But it's because they're feeling a need to protect their beliefs, right? They're feeling the need to protect their belief systems and their identity, which is funny. That's exactly what the ego is, right? So the reason that can be a problem is because the identity has been created off the programming that's not even yours in the first place. So it's not even really who you are, and it's not even really who you want to be. So you can see why anxiety and depression could go very, very high for people because they're living a life based off programming and an identity that is not even who they really are or who they actually want to be. It's just been installed based off environment, family, school, society, right? It's like your parents told you who you should be, society told you who you should be, people at school told you who you should be, people at university told you who you should be, people at your job tell you who you should be, right? And you start dating someone and they tell you who you should be. Maybe if you've got a partner who's not really the greatest like partner, then they're telling you who you should be. They're developing expectations about who you should be, right? That is a big problem. And the core of the problem we need to take responsibility for. It's not the society's fault, right? That's just how it is. We need to take responsibility for ourselves, and we need to go, you know what? I need to discover who I really am. And this is the beingness. Who do you really want to be? Who are you really? People don't know who they really are. That's a problem. If you live with the facade of who you think you should be without honoring who you actually are, you will get tired, you will get depressed, you will get anxious, you'll get all sorts of fucked up, right? Things won't work because you're not even being who you are. You're trying to fit into some mold, which is not even yours. Equals suffering, right? So most people just, and most people live like this. It's a real weird thing, but most of our world, people just live out this existence that's not really true to their deep self, and they wonder why they struggle so much, right? Like spirituality, this concept of spirituality is like a weird thing in our society because you've got religion, you've got spirituality, like there's all these taboos and all these weird things. So we don't ever even ask ourselves the deeper questions, and then we don't even get to connect with who we really are as a being, right? So what we really need to do is we need to break free from the limits of our conditioned or programmed self. And again, the reason why that can be hard is because we develop familiarity or reliance on the program that we're currently running because it keeps us safe, right? You maybe have built a life where you've got some sense of safety, some sense of comfort. And even if it's not deeply fulfilling for you, you're still living that life because it's safe, right? And it's not just that you just do it because it's safe. You've created neural pathways, right? You've created a certain way of thinking. Your body is adapted to that way of being now, right? And this is why you can get all these issues, anxiety, depression, but even more health issues and stuff like that, because you really just changed your body into, your body's not in congruency with your deeper self, with your spirit, right? You're being someone who you're not really, destined to be. And yeah, that's, not just a spiritual level, but it starts to become a physical and mental thing as well in your brain and your body, your chemicals, your hormones. It's all, it's adapted to this version of yourself. So yeah, and then again, feedback loop. Now you've got an identity, you've got your beliefs, you've got your experiences, memories, all that kind of stuff, right? Yeah, so your mind and your body, it gets used to this way of being. And so anything that challenges that belief or that perspective is a threat. So good job for being here, right? Because I'm essentially posing a threat to your existence right now, right? So you've all got the courage, and I'm deeply grateful that you trust me to help you with this stuff, because it's courageous to question yourself and your identity, right? Because it will sometimes feel like a threat. You maybe felt nervous when you made the decision to do this thing. That's a normal thing. That's a defense mechanism from the subconscious self, which is like, oh, I don't know if I want to do that. Maybe I feel a bit nervous, bit of fear. Defense mechanism, right? Normal thing. Because there's a potential threat to your identity. Is this going to change the way that I think? Is this going to change the way that I am? All right, but it's my real intention to not necessarily change it, but help it to become more authentic, help you to become a more authentic version of yourself. But you can start to see now why people get stuck in these feedback loops, right? And the key to breaking these feedback loops is to have some humility, drop the pride, and have that courage, right? And like I said, you've got to let go of your current beliefs and current ways of thinking. And I would go as far as to say that you need to let go of yourself. So yeah, this is all in the blog as well, by the way, if you want to go and reread this, or it'll be in the slides after this, but I'm pretty sure this is kind of like the end. We're going to move into the activities now. We're probably going to go a little bit over time today, but that's okay. If you guys are okay with that, I'll be here. If you need to jump off, it's fine, but we might go a little bit over time. Cool. So with all that being said, one of the biggest problems is simply this. You are not fully aware or in acceptance of all the aspects of yourself. So that's to say that you're not fully conscious of yourself. right? And it's not to say that like, oh, it's just you, there's a problem with you, right? We all have this issue, right? I have this issue. There's a dark side, right? Where it's like, I didn't even see that, right? Like I wasn't even aware of that, right? So it's not just that, it's not like something wrong with you, because remember, the conscious mind is only able to see one frame at a time, right? So this is true for all of humanity, right? You can only be conscious of one frame, right? One moment at a time. So it's natural for us that we are not fully aware or conscious of all the aspects of our non-physical self, right? All the thoughts, emotions, beliefs, yada, 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 right? And so we have these parts of ourselves which are either unconscious, totally unconscious, or that we are in resistance to. So like I said before, subconsciously, you think that there's these bad parts of yourself. Well, I'm not good at this. I'm not good at that. This never works out for me. Having negative self-talk. That's why I say it over and over again. Don't worry about your negative self-talk. And what I mean by that, I know it's a really simple, probably oversimplified way of saying it, but it's like a better way of saying it would be, do not judge your negative thoughts. Like they're not bad. People have a negative thought and they say, oh, it's bad. I don't want to have these negative thoughts. It's bad that I'm having negative thoughts. It doesn't matter. It's not important. Don't judge yourself. Right? The problem is not the negative thoughts. The problem is the judgment that you are holding towards yourself for those negative thoughts. That's the issue. You judge parts of yourself as bad or negative, which creates resistance. I don't want to be feeling like this, which creates suffering. Don't do that. Do not judge yourself. Just allow yourself to have the experiences that you're having. Cool. Now, back to the key. You have to learn to love and accept all parts of yourself. And for you to love and accept yourself, you need to understand and be conscious of yourself. So one of the things that I believe has helped me develop a strong mindset is extreme self-examination. Right? Like, I'm extremely curious about myself. I'm extremely curious about my thoughts, about my patterns, about my ways of being. And I don't think it's not in a self-indulgent way where I'm just thinking about myself from an egotistical point, but I am deeply curious about what's going on internally. And the reason I am is because I believe that what we experience externally is a direct reflection of who we are internally. I really believe that. All of the stuff that we've talked about today is essentially pointing towards that. The experience that you have externally, your perception, it's like the world is a mirror, right? And let me just really explain this to you in a way that you might not have heard of before. If the world is a mirror, how does a mirror work, right? It needs an image in front of it. If you go and stand in the bathroom, right, you need to stand in front of the mirror, and then there's an image reflected back to you, right? So if the world is a mirror, then you are the image, and what you see in the mirror is the reflection of the image. Just let that sink in for a second. The world is out there, and the world is a mirror, right? The way that a mirror works is it needs to have an image in front of it to be reflected. So the world is a mirror. You are the image that is standing in front of the mirror. And so what's being reflected back to you is what is within you. And it doesn't work exactly the same as a mirror, but you can imagine that it's like almost like a delayed mirror, right? Like a slightly delayed mirror. So if you were to go into your bathroom and stand in front of the mirror, it's almost as if that image of you will slowly appear over the next 5 minutes, let's just say. You stand in front of the mirror, and as you stand in front of the mirror, it's not being directly reflected, but then as you stand there for 5 minutes, the image of you pops up, right? And so obviously it's not like a physical mirror, because we're talking more about the non-physical here, but this is your perspective, right? Whatever's inside you, your perspective, your identity, your beliefs, your habits, whatever, will be reflected externally in the experiences that you have. So the world is a mirror, but understand that the mirror needs the image. And the image is you. You are the image. And so this is why I'm deeply curious about myself and what's going on in myself and how I'm looking at the world, because I really believe that my world, my reality is created through the image that I present to it. For me, the world is not external, right? It's internal. So that's why I'm deeply curious about my inner world. Because by being deeply curious about my inner world, firstly, it allows me to alleviate any anxiety or depression. Like, it's just, that's not something that I experience. And I have absolutely zero worries about ever experiencing that in my life ever again, right? Not to say that I won't experience it, but I'm not worried about it, right? Because if it happens, it happens. I don't care. Like, it's just an experience, right? I know that I'll be able to go through that experience, fine. And I believe why I'm sharing this with you is because this comes through a deep self-examination. Once you understand yourself, once you start to understand yourself, you understand how the world works. It's deeply helpful for managing life. So bad things might happen, good things might happen. You just take it as it comes. That's the solid mindset. But it all starts within, right? It all starts within. Okay. So we're going to go over, because it's 1 o'clock now, we're on top of the hour, but I still got a bit to go. So yeah, if you guys are chilling, I know it's a public holiday anyway, so if you guys are chilling, then you can chill. If you got to go, I totally understand. But yeah, we have to learn to love and accept all parts of ourselves. We need to learn how to understand and be conscious of all parts of ourselves. We do not want to be ashamed of parts of ourselves, right? But the shame cannot exist in the light of understanding and empathy. So I would actively look out for parts of myself that I'm ashamed of, because I want to bring those parts into the light, because it can't live in the light. Shame cannot live in the light of understanding and empathy. If I am seeing clearly the things that I'm ashamed of, and I'm not afraid of being with them and having empathy towards myself for those things, then they can't exist. I'm taking away the power of the shame by looking directly at it and accepting it and understanding it and loving it, right? And so this is the next part of the exercise, which is we're going to look at the nasty, dark, shadow side of yourself, which you don't want people to see, and you currently may be ashamed of, right? It's very common that people I work with are holding shame, and I have experienced it myself as well. Like there's to this day things that there's shame around. Like, I'm doing this exercise myself, and there's some things, right? And if you feel a little scared about this, that's normal, right? But don't worry, it'll be transformative for you as you learn to love and accept yourself fully. So if you feel a little bit of fear or a little bit of like uncomfortable about looking at these parts of yourself where you might be holding shame, just want you to know that that's perfectly normal, right? That's the whole nature of it. We try to suppress this stuff. We try to push it down, and that's why it has power over us, right? It lives in the shadow. It lives in the dark. But it lives in the unconscious. What we want to do is we want to make it conscious, because until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Remember from the start of this session? Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at the unconscious. We're going to make it conscious. All right. So this is where the fun starts. Cool. All right. Now, what I want you to do is get your journal out or get your notes out on your phone. Yeah. Cool. And I am just going to share with you guys some stuff, right? I'll give you some ideas. So, oh, bugger. Hold on a second, guys. Sorry, I've made a little bit of a mistake here. Okay. But yeah, first of all, just get your journal out because we're going to do this exercise together. Get your journal out, and I want you to write down these things here that I'm sharing. So, first of all, at the top, you can write like shadow self, or the shadow character, excuse me, shadow self, shadow character at the top. And then you might want to give it a name. Like I gave mine the name Dark Josh. So there's a dark side of me, right? And I've called him Dark Josh. So you might want to give yours a name as well. And we're going to look at this stuff, right? And you don't have to share it with everyone in the group here. I'm not going to like expose you guys. This is very private stuff, so you can keep it to yourself. You can share it if you want to, but you don't need to. I'm conscious that it's, sensitive stuff. But just bear with me while I just give a little bit more clarity here for you guys. So I want you to do this now, right? List out these three things, right? Shadow characteristics. So what we're doing now is essentially we're uncovering the subconscious or the unconscious shadow self, right? So we're going to start by listing out 3 to 5 shadow characteristics. So parts of yourself that make you scared of yourself. So shadow characteristics, give it a name. There's a shadow character, it's Dark Josh or whatever it is, And then first step is shadow characteristics. So parts of yourself that make you scared of yourself. And then just list 3 to 5 of those. Right. So some examples of mine, right? Shadow characteristics. Sometimes I'm very blunt and rude. I don't know if you would probably stuff that you wouldn't know about me, but sometimes I can be quite blunt. Or actually, maybe you would be, because I've been trying to be more expressive on myself on Instagram lately. So you probably have seen that side. But sometimes I can be a little bit blunt and a little bit rude. I can be hyper independent. Like these are my characteristics: hyper independent. But these parts of myself that scare me, right? Blunt and rude, hyper independent. Sometimes I'm very judgmental, and I'm very competitive, right? I don't do well in team sports. I'm usually very much by myself. There's another part of myself which scares me, which is I know that I have the capacity to be completely detached. So I can easily detach from things. And that's the scary thing for me. Because I made a choice at some stage to be attached to my wife, right? Like I'm in obviously a marriage. To do that, I chose to be attached to her, right? So I chose to actually be attached to her because that's, I believe, important in a marriage, right? But there's a dark side of me that is totally able to detach and be completely free-spirited, right? And it's not necessarily a dark side, but it's just one of those characteristics where it's kind of like a bit scary. I'm like, I know that I have the capacity to be that dark horse that just is spontaneous and erratic, and that's a shadow part of myself. But those are just some examples of characteristics, right? So you guys think about your own characteristics, things that scare you about yourself. And again, the purpose of this exercise is really just to develop a deeper understanding. So you might feel uncomfortable doing this. And I know for me, when I did this, I almost felt a little bit like I felt yuck. Like I felt a bit yuck doing this. Like I felt like, oh, wow, that feels a bit strange, feels a bit uncomfortable. And so if you feel that way, it's normal and it's actually good, because what that's representing is that you don't fully love yourself, right? Because the fact is that these parts of yourself are parts of yourself. And so, as I mentioned, there's some of those characteristics of mine, which are a little bit scary and almost give me the ick of myself. But imagine if I live like that, unconsciously giving myself the ick, right? Like feeling yuck and uncomfortable with myself and not fully accepting all of those parts of myself. You can see how that would create a less harmonious existence in comparison to if I was to fully accept that those parts of myself are parts of myself. Does that make sense? Type a 333 in the chat box if you're understanding that so far, or a 444, whatever number we're up to. What number we're up to? 444. Nice. Yeah, cool. Yeah. So it is confronting and it is revealing. But yeah, list 3 to 5 of those parts of yourself that make you scared of yourself, and then attitudes. So attitudes of yourself that make you hate yourself, right? So there's a part of myself which is quite cynical as well, right? Very distrusting. I don't like to be like that. I like to be trusting, right? I don't like to be distrusting. I don't like to be cynical, right? However, there is a part of myself that has that attitude, right, of cynicism and distrust. And yeah, sarcasm as well. Sometimes I'm just overly sarcastic, which I don't really like about myself. And sometimes I'm apathetic, right? So a bit lazy, or like, oh, I don't care, doesn't matter, right? I also don't like that part about myself, right? So super interesting stuff, what's going to come up here for you. But yeah, what are those shadow attitudes of yourself that make you hate yourself? Or at least like you're like, oh, I don't like that part of myself. But you usually try to suppress that part of yourself, and you probably even pretend it's not there. Maybe you have never even looked at it before in your life. And then finally, the shadow actions and behaviors. So this is the actions that make you ashamed of yourself, right? So yeah, again, for me, one of the actions that makes me ashamed of myself is just laziness. When I'm lazy, now I don't like it when I'm lazy. When I have self-pity, or when I compare myself to others, I don't like that. Or when I gossip and small talk, also the judgment again, I don't like it when I do that about myself. And then this is not a real problem for me anymore, but it was once upon a time, was the substance abuse, right? Alcohol and drugs. I used to really get ashamed of myself when I would do that. So yeah. Let me know once you guys have got all these down, right? Type a 555 in the chat box once you've got all these ones down. Or if you have any questions, you're welcome to ask questions now as well. I'll give another 60 seconds on this, and then we'll move on. Cool. And another thing, guys, is you can develop this over the next couple of weeks. So, next week we're going to be talking about energetic upgrades. And so I think it's going to tie very nicely into this. But again, similar to the alchemy of self, right? It's a document that's going to continue to get refinement. This shadow self character that you're developing now, probably you want to, over the next couple of weeks, start to get more familiar with it. Because even though it feels uncomfortable, like I'm sure, just type a yes or no if this feels uncomfortable for you. Like for me, it definitely felt uncomfortable, right? Remember, the idea here is that we are becoming more integrated within our whole self. So if you imagine there's two parts of yourself, there's a dark side and there's a light side. If you just focus on what's in the light without ever addressing what's in the dark, there's a split. Right? There's a lack of integrity. There's a lack of congruence. There's a lack of alignment, and there's a not as much harmony as there could be. So the point of understanding these parts of yourself is to learn to love these parts of yourself as well. And that will probably feel like you'll probably feel like, I don't know if I want to learn to love that part of myself, right? But you have to. Right? You have to at the least learn how to love and accept yourself, right? This all comes back because you're not, this is the thing. Most people think that they're perfect or that they're a good person. Like I'm always red flag, like people who tell me that they're a good person, red flag, right? Or people who say, oh, I'm a good person, I'm a nice person, red flag. People aren't good people, right? We're all capable of shit. as I'm sure that you have just realized about yourself. We all have negative aspects to ourselves. So if you love it, you accept it. Yeah, well, you need maybe loving it to begin with isn't like too high of a benchmark, but you have to, at the very least, accept that this is a part of yourself, right? And the key is to stop suppressing it. So we're going to talk about this right now, right? How do we integrate the shadow self? So Kylie, we have to stop, and not just Kylie, anyone else, we have to stop suppressing this part of ourselves. And this is going to feel totally unnatural for you guys, probably, because you're currently perceiving that there is this bad side of you. And so what you try to do is you try to suppress it. However, what you want to do is learn how to accept it. And this doesn't mean to become this egotistical person where you're just being a dick, right, or a bitch or whatever. But it's about learning to understand and accept that there is this part of yourself and you don't need to suppress it, right? And so, yeah, an example, right? If you've spent your whole life being a people pleaser and your shadow self actually is quite opinionated, it's going to feel very hard for you to start to speak your truth because you've spent so much time not. But if you can do it in a way that's kind and that's solid, people will respect it, as opposed to you essentially lying and being dishonest to your true self. Does that make sense? Like, does that help you understand? Yes or no? If you suppress these parts of yourself, in a way, you're being dishonest. You're not being in alignment with your true self. So what we're trying to do here is, at the very least, just allow ourselves to be ourselves. We're not trying to hide. We're not trying to be a good girl or a good boy, or we're not trying to, because that's what children do, right? We're not children anymore. We're adults. We're allowed to have our perspective. But all of society will tell you, no, don't do that. Don't say that. I'm offering you a different choice, right? But let's go a little bit deeper, right? Before we get into that, let's actually just look at, why does this shadow self exist? So write this question down. And this might help you to develop some more understanding and some more acceptance. Why does my shadow self exist? Write that down. Why does my shadow self exist? And then answer that. After that, what is my shadow self trying to protect me from? Your shadow self is not bad. It's been built subconsciously to protect you and keep you safe in some way, right? So what is my shadow self trying to protect me from? And then what does my shadow self need from me? Answer these 3 questions. And then you can ask yourself the 4th question, which is, how can I stop suppressing this side of myself? So answer these questions now. I'll give you a few minutes to do that. What does my shadow self exist? Or why does my shadow self exist? Sorry. What is my shadow self trying to protect me from? And what does my shadow self need from me? And once you've answered those questions, you can ask yourself, how can I stop suppressing this side of myself? And then just type, I know this will take a few minutes, but once you're done that, just type a 666 in the chat box. And again, you can, this will be an evolving process over the next couple of weeks. So do this once now, reflect on it, think about it over the next couple of weeks. Keep this in your awareness for the next couple of weeks. It'll be very fascinating for you. At least it has been for me. Very interesting.
Josh, are there some ways to I'm just a bit stuck on what the shadow self's trying to protect me on or from. Are there some, I don't know, ways to try and unpack that a bit?
Yeah, so I'll just share with you, my mine, okay?
Sure.
All right. So first question, why does my shadow self exist? I wrote, why does Dark Josh exist? Dark Josh exists to show me that there's an extreme level of freedom, power, and potency that is available to me as an individual, to remind me that self-reliance is important and also that nothing really matters, to recognize that it's possible to enjoy the pleasures of the material world, but also that overindulging can lead to sadness and a lack of meaning. And it's to teach me about infinite potential, balance, and the polarizing nature of reality. What is Dark Josh trying to protect me from, right? So, for example, my shadow attitudes were like cynical, sarcasm, distrust, apathy. My shadow characteristics are like hyper competitive, hyper judgmental, hyper independent, ability to completely detach, those kinds of things. What is Dark Josh trying to protect me from? I think that once I read that, Dark Josh is trying to protect me from pain. He's trying to protect me from being hurt by others. And he's trying to protect me from being reliant on things outside of myself. And so that's obviously very personal to me. But if I think back towards my childhood, yeah, like my parents divorced when I was at a very vulnerable age. Both of them were drinking a lot, and there was a bit of violence before they got divorced and after. And I was the eldest child, so I probably didn't know how to handle that. And so I developed this extreme self-reliance, and I didn't rely on anyone outside of myself, right? Like I didn't rely on my parents. I didn't rely on mum or dad. All my siblings were younger than me as well. So I think I may have developed this hyper independence and stuff, and this self-reliance to avoid pain or being hurt by others, to avoid being hurt, like let down by others. So that would have been and again, it's not a bad thing. It's just that would have been a safety mechanism for me when I was a kid. I would have done that as a safety mechanism, right? And so it's just about looking at yourself and going, okay, cool. Well, I wonder, like, what is this? What is this shadow self trying to protect me from? Maybe not right now, but like even if you just reflect onto your childhood or your development as a person, do you think, is there anything that comes to the intuition or that comes to mind? Does that help? Yeah. Does it give you some insight?
Yeah, for sure. Thank you.
Cool. Yeah. And again, like I said, it's not bad. It's just like we're just kind of understanding why we are the way that we are. And then the next one, what did I say? What does my shadow self need from me? What does Dark Josh need from me? And I just wrote a whole bunch of words like, okay, awareness, acceptance, more ownership, more responsibility. I also wrote vulnerability, like to be more vulnerable, to be more empathetic and compassionate, to be more open, and also to try to integrate a little bit more fun and lightheartedness. So it's like there's this dark side of myself, but it's actually trying to protect me and trying to teach me things, to become a better version of myself and a more whole and complete version of myself. Because the reality is, like, our physical reality and our world that we live in is polarizing. There's negative and positive. It's not all good. So this is why I often talk about this in here. Don't try to pretend like things should be all good all the time, because that's not really a realistic goal to aim for, because that's never going to be the case. The only way that can be the case is by understanding the paradox that by accepting the bad, that's how you experience more good. So whereas most people try to only have the good and have none of the bad, and so those people end up struggling more. What I'm saying is good and bad both exist, and we need to learn how to accept that there are bad things. And when we do accept that there are bad things, that allows us to experience more good overall. Because it's essentially like that acceptance, which is a positive thing. It almost like dissolves the negative things, because we go, okay, yeah, that's bad, but it is what it is. I accept it. And it kind of just goes away. Cool. Any other questions, guys? Who's finished? Just type a done in the chat box. DONE, done. If you're done. 666, done. Cool. Awesome. All right, I'm going to move on, guys, just because we're chewing into the time now. Cool. How do you know the shadow integration is working? So we've basically, what we've just done here, we've just opened up a can of worms, right? And so how do you know the shadow integration is working? It will feel uncomfortable and it will feel a bit unnatural to begin with. But as you start to become more of this person who you really are, you'll start to feel less drained at the end of the day. In the beginning, it might feel a little bit more draining because you're like, well, this is all a bit intense, right? But as you become more and more yourself, right? And as you start to become a little bit more familiar with that uncomfortableness and you lean into it and you get more familiar with it, you'll actually feel less drained, right? Because if you currently feel drained each day and like you're just burnt out or depressed or constantly anxious, it could be that you're spending too much energy being someone that you're not, which actually takes a lot of energy because you're wearing this mask and you're trying to pretend like you're someone that you're not. And that is hard. So as you start to become who you really are, it will probably feel uncomfortable and unnatural in the beginning. But as you practice it and practice it and practice it, you will feel your energy coming back. You'll feel less drained. You'll feel more empowered, right? But again, a reminder, if you do feel uncomfortable or if it does feel a little bit unnatural to begin with, that's normal and that's okay. You want to continue just to integrate, right? How do I stop suppressing this side of myself and just allow myself to experience who I am? So I'll give you an example, a practical example of this from this morning, right? I am not totally free from self-judgment. This morning, I did this exercise recently, and then I said, you know what, I need to be more of an expression of consciousness. I need to allow myself to express myself consciously more, right? And so for what that means for me is like, just try not to be as filtered. Try to just be a pure expression of consciousness. I'm not trying to be anything else other than exactly what's coming through me in the moment. I just want to be a channel for consciousness, and whatever's coming through me, whatever feels good, I'm going to allow it to come through, right? And so I said, cool, I'm going to start doing that more, right? This morning, I made some Instagram stories and an Instagram post where I made a video and where I shared an expression of consciousness. I just shared what was coming through me at the time, which felt alive and what felt good. And then after I did it, I went into a bit of a spiral of self-judgment. And I was like, oh, should I have said that? I don't like, oh, like, you know, I just went into this unnatural and uncomfortable feeling state. And I reminded myself, this is normal. It's okay for me to feel this, right? I don't need to resist this. I don't need to fight against this, right? There might have been another version of me that would be like, oh, take it down. You know, don't put that up. Like, don't kind of share stuff like that, right? I'm sure you guys have, you know, resonated with like sharing shit on social media. And just as an example, right? Be like, oh, I don't know if I should post that, or what should I post, or should I say that, or should I not say that, what should I write, you know? So that happened to me this morning, right? Where I was like, all right, I'm going to post this thing, and then self-judgment kicked in afterwards. But this is my practice to allow myself to be myself, to trust myself. I felt good to share that. It felt true for me. It feels like a real perspective that I have that I wanted to share with others. And so the practice is then allowing myself to do so without judging myself. And it does, a practical example I'm giving you, it felt uncomfortable and it felt unnatural. But the key then is to allow myself to just feel that and go, oh yeah, it's okay. It's not the end of the world. I'm not going to try and fight these emotions. I'm not going to try and fight these feelings. If I feel uncomfortable, if it feels unnatural, okay, right? I'm allowed to feel that way. I don't need to change that. I'm allowed to feel a little bit uncomfortable. I'm allowed to feel a little bit, you know, unnatural. It's okay. And that's a direct experience or a personal experience of me becoming more of who I want to be or who I am, right? So think we're nearly done, guys. But yeah, that's how you know that integration is actually working, right? So a few more things to reprogram the subconscious mind and to reprogram the unconscious mind. The integration, obviously, what we were just talking about is to be aware of this stuff over the next couple of weeks. But also to continue practicing your journaling, your meditation, writing, the alchemy of self, all that kind of stuff. I put here super learning because this is something that I've been exploring lately, which essentially is what we've just done, right? Super learning is essentially, there's another name for it, energy psychology, right? Which is learning that stimulates feeling, emotion, energy, which I'm sure that you can probably attest to. That learning that we just did wasn't just mental learning. It was probably some emotional learning as well, right? So keep up with your meditation. And I'm going to give you another little bonus thing as well about self-hypnosis in a second. Keep up with your meditation and your self-acceptance and your self-awareness. Keep up with your journaling and keep up with your learning, which is what we're doing in here. And those are actually the 3 best ways to reprogram the subconscious mind. So you can ask yourself these questions. Who do you need to be? What new habits do you need to implement? And what new personal standards do you need to hold? What new beliefs and thoughts do you need to tell yourself? You don't have to do this right now. All of this is available in the Alchemy of Self. So if you go and watch that, then that's a great thing to work on next, because you might not want to, we've just uncovered a lot already. So you might want to sit with this for a little bit, process this for a little bit. And then, another thing that would be good to do if you haven't already, or if you have, is to just go and revisit that Alchemy of Self document. So some action points to finish today's session, right, is to complete the Alchemy of Self document, right, when you get a chance. Next thing, if you've already done it, awesome. Go revisit it, just check it out, make sure it's still kind of, in alignment. Create a new identity, new standards, new habits, and new beliefs. And consistently reinforce this shadow work practice through your daily journaling and meditation. So keep observing this practice and this process and this shadow side of yourself over the next couple of weeks, right? You're probably going to feel a little bit uncertain or unclear right now, but I'm going to just ask you to trust the process and keep up with an awareness of when that shadow self is kind of coming to the surface. And when it does, allow it to be there. Don't judge yourself. Just observe, be aware, and accept. And then a bonus action, which is the last thing that we're going to talk about today, and something that could be fun for you guys to explore, is to record a self-hypnosis. So once you've, spent some time with this shadow self, once you've gone and done the alchemy of self, then another exercise that you could do, which would be fun, is to record a self-hypnosis. So this is essentially like you get your phone up and you record an audio file where you speak some new beliefs and a new identity into the recording so that you can listen to it back and play it back into yourself in the morning or in the evening for the next 8 weeks. So for the next couple of months. So I've done that in the past. I've recorded self-hypnosis like audios. It's obviously different to the silent meditation. If you are on a roll with your silent meditation, then you don't need to change it. But if you feel called to, you can play around with this idea of the self-hypnosis. Like everything in here, right? I'm not going to give you like firm, like do this, do this, do this. I give you options, and I encourage you to tune into your intuition and trust what you feel like you need to do next. And if you don't know that, pull it back, sit in some silent meditation and allow yourself to focus on being and see what comes to your mind. Cool. Massive, massive session today, guys. I'm going to call this the Mega Shadow Work Masterclass. That's what I'm actually going to do that. I'm going to upload it later and I'm going to call it the Mega Shadow Work Masterclass. And so, yeah, all of the slides will be there. And if you want to replay, this session, you can do that again. But yeah, guys, over the next couple of weeks, just like, again, you don't need to do too much. Don't focus on having the end outcome. Focus on just being and trusting the process, right? That's really the key. That's the key to all of it. So I know we've been going for like 90 minutes already, but I'll stay on for a little bit longer, just if there's any questions or any like decompression that anyone wants to do. If you have any questions, you're welcome to just unmute yourself and ask, or anything that you want to just talk about or discuss or want further clarity on. I'm happy to chill for another 5 or 10 minutes and answer any questions you guys might have. But good work. That was a big session. Well done.
I must head in now, Josh. Thanks for the session.
Easy, Larry. Good stuff, mate.
Thank you.
Talk to you soon.
See you, mate.
See you,
Thanks.
mate. Bye. Awesome. Anything else, guys? Are you pretty happy with that? Oh, there's a lot to chew on there.
There's a lot to digest out of that, Josh. Thank you.
That's all right. Yeah, so Tuesday night, tomorrow night, there's a Q&A. So, if you do want to just take some time to process all of that, and then if you would like to discuss further tomorrow, for example, just jump onto the Q&A Tuesday night, and we can discuss whatever needs to be discussed at that point. Otherwise, I think, Kylie, I got a one-on-one with you, I think, this week. Is that right? Or next week?
Yeah, and I've got a one-on-one with you on Wednesday.
Oh, yeah, cool. Yeah, we can also just discuss them as well.
Yeah, that'd be great. Because really what was coming up, like just when you were just saying, like, why does my shadow self exist? It just kept coming back to what you were saying about the dark and light. It's like you got to accept the dark with the light. That's what sort of kept coming up for me. But my energy was really changing the more you got into it, Josh. It was like, fuck, this is hard, but the energy shifted. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty confronting. But like I said, yeah, if you can just try not to do too much with all of this, but just focus on observing it. And I can tell you right now, like that's what I've been doing for the last about 48 hours, is just like observing myself. And it brings about a new sense of lightness, like a shift in the energy, right? Your energy starts to shift and you start to feel a bit more accepting of yourself and a bit more, like, all right, lighter. So it's good stuff. And like I said, yeah, we probably will feel uncomfortable, but that's okay. Not doesn't mean anything's wrong. Actually, that's a sign that you're on the right track. Cool.
Thank you. That was really good.
Yeah, nice. Epic.
Josh, I'm not sure if it's maybe setting up a separate session or something, but yeah, I think I'd would really like to dig in a bit more to the what's my shadow self trying to protect me from, because I think there's probably the unlock that I just haven't been able to, I know some of the things I do, and I know, what probably, be a bit more compassionate and what are the things that I need to do to sort of start understanding a bit more. But I feel like I still need to kind of get to the bottom of some of that. Why am I doing it, or what's actually underneath all of this?
Yeah. Okay. I think you haven't done your week 3. So there's a free call at week 3 in the healing session.
Yeah.
I don't think you've done that, have you?
No.
Yeah. So you can book that one in if you want.
Okay.
Just use if you go to the anxiety to alignment course, and in week 3 there's the healing section, and I offer a free call there to help people with the healing stuff, which is essentially, it's kind of like what this is anyway. So yeah, you're welcome to just book a call in through that link in week 3 there.
Okay,
We'll
great.
discuss it then.
Great, thank you.
Awesome. Cool. How did you go, Pols?
Okay, it's good. It got me thinking, but got me thinking deep. But yeah, it's uncomfortable, but I wrote some notes down, so yeah, pretty good.
Nice. Yeah, cool. Awesome. Good work. Yeah, it is uncomfortable, but like I said, we don't want to be it's okay to feel a little bit uncomfortable, right? And I think what you'll find is as you allow yourself to be uncomfortable, you actually develop strength. You develop more strength, more self-confidence, and it's a very positive thing. So awesome work, everyone. We'll leave it there today. Again, if you have it, I know, Kylie, I'm talking to you on Wednesday. Loz, I'll talk to you whenever you're booking a call. Polly, if you need anything, you can always just shoot me a message. I'm happy to jump on a quick call with you as well if you need something. But yeah, that's it, guys. Thank you. I'll talk to you soon, and great work again. Tuesday night Q&A. If you need to digest this a little bit, we can talk about that next Monday. We'll do something on called energetic upgrades, which I haven't exactly mapped out yet, but it'll be something that tails in nicely with this. So anyway, that's it, guys. Have a great week, and I'll see you soon.
Thanks. Bye, Josh.
Thanks, Josh. Take care.